My friends asked me to join them in writing a reimagining of Little Women that takes place in the world of Little Women. And it ended up coming out very queer. Like, we knew, and having like an on-page abortion and dealing with feminist themes and women's rights, we knew that people would get upset. What I wasn't expecting is the thing that people seem to be the most upset about in our interpretation of Little Women is how we have portrayed Marmee. Hi, I'm Liz Parker. I am one of the authors who wrote The Other March Sisters, which is a reimagining of Little Women that tells stories for Meg, Beth, and Amy March, while Jo March is away in New York. So I wrote Meg's story, and one of the things that happens in Meg's story is she is at odds with her mother. She's married, she's not happy in her marriage, and she's starting to realize that she ended up in an unhappy marriage because of Marmee. And like, if you read Little Women, it's actually in the text. This is not something that I just like made up. I did make up a story for her that pulls from that, where she becomes an herbalist, and there's all these things that she does where she's building community and she's looking to try to actually find love in this marriage in which she's unhappy. But the discontent is in the text. Now, when people think about Little Women, they think about Meg as being so happy in her marriage. She was the sister who wanted love. And like, that is portrayed by a lot of the adaptations, but that's not true to the book. In fact, Meg told Jo she didn't want to get married. And when John proposed the first time, she said no. She turned him down. Aunt March came in and was like, "Oh, yes, you made the right choice. You can't marry a poor man." And that pissed Meg off because she was like, well, you can't tell me what to do. And then she also had Marmee's voice in her head of, you have to be a good little pilgrim. That's this big theme of the text, which I don't think a lot of the movies actually use the pilgrim motif that is very present in the text of Little Women. But Meg goes back and she's like, you know what? I am going to marry John. Like, fuck you, Aunt March. I'm going to be the good little pilgrim Marmee wanted me to be. And then she gets married and she's not happy. She feels like she's put on a shelf. There's this whole like chapter about being put on a shelf. She has this fiasco with the jelly where like Marmee's like, well, you need to figure it out and you need to make sure that your man is happy. And it's not feminist. It's messy. And we portray that side of Marmee in The Other March Sisters because Meg feels like she had to become basically a carbon copy of her mother because Marmee got married and her husband like kind of squandered his wealth, which is another theme of the book. Now, again, in the movies, Marmee is portrayed as being very warm and being like the perfect mother. People are so mad. They're so mad that we didn't do this in The Other March Sisters. Like, to the point that like, I came across a tweet that was like, I've never wanted to cyberbully before, but I want to cyberbully the authors of The Other March Sisters. And I'm like, honey, have you read Little Women? Have you even read it? Anyway, and then people are also upset because they're like, well, why would Marmee do that to Meg and then expect Amy to marry rich? Because that's a part of Amy's story that my friend Linda wrote, is there's these expectations on her to save the family because she is the only one left who can really marry and bring money to the family, because Meg married a poor guy. Jo's probably never going to get married because Jo doesn't like men. Also in the subtext of Little Women, anyway, and Beth's dying. So like, it's like all on Amy, and they're like, well, that's so inconsistent that Marmee would think that Meg needs to marry poor and Amy needs to marry rich. And I'm like, have you never had like sisters and a mom where you're treated differently? Like, Meg's the eldest, Amy's the youngest. There's these things, parents don't treat all their kids the same way. Anyway, it's fascinating to me because people are so mad about the Marmee thing. Like, if you go look up early reviews for The Other March Sisters, so again, here's the book. Oh, inverted so you can see it. But if you look up reviews, like the 1 and 2 star reviews, especially some of the 3-star reviews on like Goodreads or NetGalley, people are so mad. They're so mad about the Marmee thing. And I'm thinking about it, like, I think part of this has to do with the fact that Marmee is portrayed in the film adaptations as quite a bit different than she is in the actual Little Women book. So people have this view of her, and I think a lot of these people haven't read Little Women since they were young, if they've read it at all. I think the other part of it is that the people who have read Little Women and have idolized Marmee, either read it when they were younger, or they read it with rose-colored glasses because their own mothers got them into Little Women. And so, like, to villainize Marmee is like destroying their relationship with their mothers. I think that that's part of it. I think the other part of it is that we also have this subset of Little Women fandom that is conservative. And Meg's story is very anti-conservative. The whole book is, because it's very queer. But like, Meg's story is very anti-trad wife, which is how Meg has been portrayed so much as a trad wife. And the story that I wrote for her is like, that's not it. That's not what she wants out of life. She wants something for her. She doesn't want to just be a mother, or just be a wife, or just be a daughter, or an eldest sister. She wants to be Meg March. And she is, that part of the book is titled Finding Meg March, because she's looking for herself. And so I think that that's this subset of conservative Little Women fans, like, are trying to find a way to criticize the book without coming across as homophobic, because there are bisexual characters, there are gay characters, and Meg's story is the only story that, like, if you are not queer yourself, you may not realize and recognize that I've written Meg as bisexual, which again, that also pulls from the original text of Little Women, because Meg had this relationship with Annie Moffat in Little Women, that if you are a bisexual woman and you read that from them as teens, like, it's more than a friendship. Anyway, but so I think because I did that in Meg's story in more of a subtext, I didn't write Meg is attracted to men and women. It was like, you see this interaction between them because Meg engages with Annie in the story. And so but all that to say, I think what's happening is we have these conservative readers who are like, okay, well, I don't want to get canceled because so much of the book community is queer positive, as it should be. And so they come after Meg's story, because Meg's is the story that's not overtly gay, I guess, because we made Lori bisexual and Beth has like a lesbian relationship, and we made Beth a lesbian. But so the queerness of Meg's story is not super overt for her as a character. So I think they're going after her story because it's a way to write a scathing 1-star of the review of the book without outing themselves as homophobic. I think that that's what's happening. I really do. And then it's also, all of that ties in because if we villainize the mother of Little Women, which I wouldn't say we villainize her. I would say that we set her up as the metaphor of society's expectations for women in the lives of Meg, Beth, and Amy March. But if you villainize Marmee, you are villainizing a conservative family unit. And I think that that's what's happening. I think that that is why they are so upset. Anyway, if you watch this whole video, thank you. Tell me what you think. I'm curious your take on this.